Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coltrane Conservatory Arts Talk Show. My name is Joe Pace III, and I will be your host for the next 30 minutes as we go over several topics. Now, I want to start off by saying that we have moved the school to, we're moving the school rather, as I speak, to our brand new location, which is 1809 East 93rd Street here in Chicago. Now, if you want to get more information on that, you may call our school number, which is 773-891-1875, or you may call this number you see on your screen, 312-738-1060, and we'll give you more information about that. Now, bear in mind that we do teach the piano, we teach the drums, we teach trumpet, and all brass instruments for that matter, and also we teach guitar. So if you're interested in any of those, training on any of those instruments, we'd be more than happy to enroll you and get you going. We can give you more information about the tuition and things of that type once you give us a call. Now, this is an interactive program, which means that you have the privilege to call in and make comments or ask questions. We do talk about things that go very deep in terms of personal development. How to deal with life on this earth is a good way of putting it. And today we're going to be talking about what I call the 3 G's. And the 3 G's essentially would be grudges, guilt, and gratitude. And we're going to start off, of course, with the first one, which is grudges. Now, we've talked about this before in some form or another. We have never dealt with it to the extent that we're going to deal with it on today, because we want to talk about what is a grudge, you know. Well, essentially, that is something that someone, or that's something that's happened in our life that we won't turn loose, you know, and it's always something bad or horrible. And so what we do is we focus on that so much until it brings into our life a lot of unpleasant situations. Now, why do I say that? Because a grudge essentially is a thought seed, okay, and it's one, because of the length of it, is one that grows and just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And so what we have to do, no matter how horrible it may have been, we have to find a way to release it. And we release it to its highest good, so to speak. If it's an individual who has violated us in some sort of way, we must find within our heart to forgive that individual, no matter what. And somebody said that we forgive because we have been forgiven. All of the mistakes that we have made, you know, over the course, I know I have, over the course of my life, I must be very grateful. I'm glad that somehow in the universe these mistakes were not held against me, okay? And so we, being who we are, as one with this source, one with this supreme intelligence, we have to function as in the way that this supreme intelligence functions. And this supreme intelligence, if it's anything, it's compassionate. And I mean it is compassionate that is unprecedented, okay? Because even people who have done some of the things that have landed them in prison, and we know what those things are, I don't need to go over them. I mean, we can start naming them. They really, really can be there are some horrible things. But even those individuals are worthy of forgiveness. Even those people there are worthy of forgiveness. So some of the things that we're holding in our mind, you know, some people, I was thinking about this the other day. Some people are holding grudges against people simply because of the fact that they are advancing or progressing in life. Now, this is weird. You know, you might say, what? Somebody's actually holding a grudge against somebody because they got a new car, or they bought a new house, or they found that special person in life and got married, and now they are living their dreams, so to speak. There are people who don't like people because of the fact that they're doing things that they themselves would like to be doing. And this is unfortunate, but this kind of shows you just how silly some of these grudges and this bitterness is, you know. I mean, we must release these things to their highest good. And the highest good for any person is health, happiness, peace, and prosperity. And we have to wish that for people if we want that to come into our life. By wishing that for another person, we then are sowing the seed for that fruition to grow and develop in our own life. So keep in mind that bitterness, strife, grudges, and that type of thing, that's what crowds the garden of our subconscious mind with weeds that eventually blossom into the external world and cause so many bad things that anything you can think of, you know. And it starts with our health. You know, it starts with our health. One of the things that we talk about is holistic healing. And holistic healing is where we pay attention to what doctors say to us. We try and eat properly. We exercise. But the part that many of us have left out is we must think healthy thoughts. Because this is where it all starts at. You know, if we're thinking healthy thoughts, if we're thinking the best for everybody else, okay, we're thinking then the best for us is going to be laid out in front of us. It's going to come into our life. It's really not rocket science, you know. Like we talked about before, we have two components of our mind. One is the conscious mind, the other is the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is where we make choices of what's going to come into that subconscious mind. The thoughts that we're going to think, the things that we're going to do, the words that we're going to use. This is controlled by the conscious mind. And guess what? Whatever comes into that conscious mind eventually will flow into the subconscious mind. And that's where all the processing takes place. That's where the sowing and reaping starts at, you know. And so we want to release that uncle, that aunt, the father who wasn't there, the mother who may not have been there, or the friend who turned out to be not as friendly as we thought that person was. We want to release all of them, every last one of them, to their highest good, meaning we wish for them peace, prosperity, happiness, and good health. All right, now that's the first G, releasing these grudges and whatnot, because they're causing so many problems in our lives, you know. And trust me when I tell you that all of these things come under the category of practice. See, you don't just decide that I'm going to do this and suddenly you do it and you do it religiously or you do it regularly or without missing a beat. It just doesn't work that way. You have to commit yourself to the practice of these principles, and you get better and better day by day, week by week, month by month, and year by year, until one day these things will be habituals to you. They will be second nature. And your life will be so beautiful until you will want to thank me and anybody else who's teaching this from the bottom of your heart. Okay, now the next thing we want to talk about is guilt. Now, so many of us, we've done some things and we know we should not have done them. They really were very unkind and inconsiderate. Some of these things, many of these things, in fact, were things that we did before we realized that we reap what we sow, okay? And so we didn't know any better. We were just doing things just to be doing them. Now, since we know better, we're trying to do better. And we're held to a higher standard once we know better. That seems to be a universal law, that we are held to a higher standard once we know better. Somebody once said that fools and something of that type, are taken care of automatic. Children and fools, I believe they said it. But anyway, once we start to learn that it's not a good thing to do bad things to other people, to think bad things about other people, to say bad things to other people, we then are held to a higher standard. And so what's happening is that many of us are holding this guilt. We have this guilt complex where I didn't do something that I should have done. I did something that I should not have done, you know. And sometimes it's somebody who was, let's say you were a father and you were unable to raise your child the way that you wanted to you should have raised your child, so to speak, or the way that you wanted to raise your child. Or you are a mother and you are unable to be there for your child. Maybe your child was adopted. Maybe you decided that you were going to leave the child with a relative, your mother, your grandmother, or your sister or someone else to raise because you were not ready for it. Don't hold that guilt feeling in your heart, because what's happening here is you get the same vibration from holding those guilt feelings from that resentment in your life against yourself as you do for that same resentment pointed or directed to someone else. It's no different. It's a very, very negative seed and vibration, and it drags on everything: your health, your happiness, your prosperity, your peace. It will drain you. Release it. And those who are trying to perpetuate it, release them to their highest good, knowing, okay, full well that you deserve to live a beautiful and wonderful life. And all of those things are in the past. They have nothing to do with this moment. In fact, what you did yesterday, what went on yesterday, is in the past. And you have today a new opportunity to start all over again, to start from the first step at this very moment. What went on an hour ago is history, and the opportunity to start in another direction exists at this very moment. So don't be bogged down. Don't let people, and people will try to help you to stay in that vibration of guilt and sometimes self-pity, because if you feel so guilty about some of these things, you start to develop that self-pity. Both these things, the self-pity and the guilt, are negative thought seeds, and they will produce nothing in your life but negativism. Nothing but negativism will be produced in your life by either one of these seeds. So no matter what has gone on in the past, forgive yourself. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, you might want to forgive yourself first, okay? Before you even make a list of all those other people that we talked about, you might need to put your name first if you make that list. I should say it like that. You may want to put your name first on that list. Put your name first. Okay, I'm forgiving myself. I'm releasing myself to my highest good, which is what this supreme intelligence wants for you. This single source, this mighty, powerful force wants for you peace, prosperity, happiness, and good health. And don't let anybody ever tell you that it's any other way. Sometimes when we're struggling, we say, oh, I'm struggling like this because I did this, that, or the other, and I'm paying for it. I'm having to pay my debt for it. Don't go for that one. Forgive yourself for if you can find sincere forgiveness. I'm not talking about just stating some words. I'm talking about repentance, so to speak, to use that word. Okay, where you genuinely feel in the depths of your heart the wrong that's been done should now end, because I've come to the point where I realize that it was wrong, and now I'm going to do all that I can with my own life to plant seeds, good seeds, that will more than compensate for those things, that will more than compensate for those things. And that's where you want to be with that. Now, we've dealt with the first two G's, grudges and guilt, and now we want to deal with the third G, which is gratitude. Everything, ladies and gentlemen, that's happening, that's good, that's happening into your life, is happening by way of this supreme being. Everything. I don't mean some things, I don't mean the supreme source is doing this and you take credit for that. That's not what I mean. I mean every last positive, good, healthy thing that's going on in your life right now. The food on the table, the shelter over your head, the clothing on your body, the car you're driving, the peace you have with your neighbors, the peace you have with your spouse, the school that you are attending to learn more and more, and learning is a great thing. That's why we talk about this supreme intelligence. Everything good that's happening in your life right now is by way of the single source of all things. Everything, and you must acknowledge that. Because when you acknowledge that, then you are planting a seed in that subconscious mind, again, in the garden of that subconscious mind, of gratitude. Gratitude is a natural law of the universe. Just as cause and effect, or gravity, or some of these things, gratitude is a law of the universe. And so it's so important to have this attitude of gratitude all the time, to walk around with it, you know, to never ever be without it, to acknowledge it in the morning when we put our feet on the floor, to acknowledge it throughout the day, to acknowledge it when someone else gives it to us, to acknowledge it all the time, because what you're doing then is you're recognizing and acknowledging that you are not the source of these things. And guess what? We are not the source of these things. We're not the source, in fact, of anything. To be honest with you, we're not the source. The source actually works through us to bring those desires into our life, those wants into our life. If, in fact, it can do that, and again, with bitterness, with guilt, feelings, and whatnot, it's unable to do that. But gratitude is what keeps that pipeline of good going. See, and when I say pipeline, we look at it like that, you know, because of the fact that it's energy that's flowing into our life, you know. It's flowing into our life. And what happens is when we have all of this clutter, so to speak, in that pipeline, and the clutter becomes the guilt, the grudges, the things that we do, the cheating, the lying, the scheming. That's clutter. And when we have that clutter in that pipeline, the flow is interrupted. Because the flow, the energy and vibration of the flow, they don't mingle with those negative thought seeds and action seeds and worry seeds. They don't mingle with that. You cannot have light and darkness in the same place at the same time. It is impossible. You cannot have it, you know. And it's the same way with good and evil, or good and bad, if we want to use that word there. They cannot exist at the same time. In fact, you can't even think a good thought and a bad thought at the same time. If you don't believe it, try it, and you cannot do it. You must think either a bad thought or you must think a good thought, because those two things, they do not intermingle. It is impossible for them to intermingle. And what we're doing when we are on this track of goodness, power, and health, and prosperity, and happiness, we're lining ourselves up with the light, with the good, with the positive. We're lining ourselves up with that. It's when we get off of this track that we run into trouble. Because the other track actually is running in a direction away from the life that we desire. And because it's running in a different direction, we then are subject to any anything that's in his pathway. Anything that's in his pathway. And we know some of the horrible things that human beings can experience. So we don't want to be on that pathway. We want to get on that good track and roll on that train. And we do that by planting those wonderful seeds into our mind of gratitude, an attitude of gratitude. Someone once said that attitude is 95% of everything that we do. And when we have the right attitude, and we add the gratitude with it, we're surely going to win every time. So we want to win in life. Like we have you see behind me, it says, a life is a terrible thing to waste. And this is so true, because life is so precious, and we just don't know the power that exists in our own life. We don't realize that our life really is limitless. There is nothing that we cannot do. And when we talk about some of the things that we are afraid to do, what we are doing is we are attracting the lesser things into our life. And some of us are setting goals, but those goals are set way too low for a human being who's being gifted with this awesome power. Way too low. Most of us are, even when we set a goal for money, some of the money that we're talking about is peanuts for a powerful human being who's been gifted by this supreme source. And somebody said that we shouldn't ask for anything because we've been given everything already. We've been given this power to attract anything into our life that we want. But the important thing is learning how to use it. Not only do we not know that the power exists in our life, but those of us who do know that the power exists in our life, we are not using it. And primarily because we don't know how to use it. We don't know how to use it. We see it being used by other people. For example, money. We see that there are people in this world, like, for example, Bill Gates, multi-billion-dollar billionaire. And we don't think that we can accumulate a few $1 million. And here, this individual has accumulated almost $100 billion, you know. And we got to know that this accumulation in his life of this material prosperity has been brought about by using this awesome power that all of us, he's no different from any of us, that we all have. Now, I'm going to leave you with that, the 3 G's, the last one being an attitude of gratitude. We must have that, ladies and gentlemen. And the more that I want you to do something for me. When you step on the floor tomorrow morning, I'd like for you to say thank you, okay? Thank you, you know. And say it with gratitude, you know, and throughout the day, try doing that. Now, also, I've asked you all to purchase the book by James Allen. That little small book, I'm going to give it to you again. The name of the book is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Get that. And we're going to see you next week at the same time. I hope that you're learning something, and be back with us on next week. Thank you.